Just a couple things. First of all, Happy New Year. I know it's already, I can't believe it's the end of January, but this is the first call of the new year. And hopefully, you know, you have kept most of your New Year's resolutions, but if you haven't, one of them being like maybe getting a new job, this is the call for you. We're going to really talk about how some 3 key things that can help you really find the career that you want, the job that you want, and take power over your career. A couple of things before we get started, just some logistics and stuff. First of all, this is the first time we're doing it live via video. I've done it with other organizations, but so if you experience any problems or anything, there's a chat. Please let me know. I'm going to try to keep people off mute so you can feel to interact. But if it starts getting noisy, I'll put that on. And also, I'm going to be, as I go through this, I'm going to give you a back over of what overview of what we'll cover, as well as pepper in some key information that I picked up along with marketing that can help you also position your career. So I might stop in the middle of things, explain something more specifically. If you have any questions, feel free to jump in and ask. But what I'm really here for is to make sure that I help you with like your brand, who you are, and creating you Inc. and where you want to take yourself as almost your own little corporation and move your career forward, whether you're in corporate America or you're building your own business. So for the call, what we're going to cover is, for those that are new to the call, because there's always quite a few new people each time that either listen in or participate, will be about an hour. I'm going to go through my credentials, my mission. I'm going to go through the content of the call, which this call is the 3 essential keys to finding the job that you love to take power over your career. I'm going to then open up for Q&A for any questions. This is like free coaching, so feel free to just jump in and be greedy about that. And at the end, I will share how you can work with me and or find out more information from me. All of you are already on my list, but if you want to work with me, you can set up a free discovery call. So anyone that's participating on this call gets a free discovery call with me. You can reach out to info@loamlife.com. That's INFO at loamlife.com. We'll set you with a free discovery call, and you'll get $100 off of any program that you sign up with. So let's see if anybody has any questions before we get started. Otherwise, I'll get into who I am and my mission, and we'll go from there. All right. So then moving on. So since many of you are new, I do want to give you an background on who I am. I'm going to start with my point of difference. And this is one of those marketing terms and things that you really need to understand to really push yourself forward, which is that point of difference, your POD. And I work with this in all my clients on their point of difference. And what it really is that key thing that's going to make you unique to your competitive set. And whether you're competing as an entrepreneur or you're competing for a job, either in a job or looking for a job, your point of difference, like what is the one thing that you want everyone to remember about you, is really important. So I'm going to be sharing like what my point of difference is. And then what I really focus on is making sure that I help my clients find that as well. So they go in, they become distinguishable, unique, and don't end up in second place but get the job that they want. So my name is Victoria Repka-Geller. Thank you for joining my Career Boost call. I've been doing this for over a year, and I am a chief marketing officer at a boutique agency in Manhattan, in actually Gramercy Park. It's for a company called Digital Pulp, and we focus on digital marketing for large companies, and I do that in my day. So I get to take all the learnings and lessons that I learn in my day around marketing and advertising and apply them to individuals that you couldn't possibly afford to get access to, but you're getting access to them through me, because I really feel like it's an opportunity to really hone where you want to take your career. That's my passion. So as that's my day job, during the evenings and on weekends that I'm starting to build closer towards, I'm actually a career strategist. And I call myself specifically a career strategist because, yes, there's coaching to it, there's mentoring, but there's also strategy. And that's really important for you to be thinking about what's your strategy when it comes to your career. I'm also, my key point of difference is I'm actually, unlike a lot of coaches, I'm a trained coach. A lot of people can just call themselves a coach, get thrown into this. I've got over 18 years plus experience in marketing and advertising. I'm trained through NYU, and also I'm ISC recognized in regards to is the International Career Transformation Federation, so I have those credentials. And what I really bring to the table, what I feel, what I hear from my clients is that I'm hearing a little bit of feedback, so I'm going to put on mute. Let's see. All right. What I bring to the table is an educated perspective. So through this education of my starting off as an assistant account executive all the way up to chief marketing officer, I have learned a lot of information, proprietary information that I've honed in, also with my studies around neuroscience, behavioral studies, and I've really packaged this to help my clients and other people take power over their career and obtain the success that they're looking for. So it's a combination of an educated perspective. I also have real work-life experience, which I've touched on, and this unique combination has really propelled me into this space, and I've been featured in the New York Times as well as the Wall Street Journal. So hopefully that gives you a little more background on who I am. I do want to tell you though about my mission, and my mission is, my commitment is to help executives, entrepreneurs, and young professionals find and navigate and succeed in their career paths. Like in my 18 years plus experience, it hasn't always been easy. It's a journey. It's kind of like the stock market. You have your ups and your downs, and you're always learning and you're always progressing. But I've done really well for myself, and my goal is to help people get where they want to go and make it easier than what I went through to get where I wanted to go. We spend at least 30% of our lives at work. So my goal is to like make it more rewarding, more enjoyable, and actually get you what you want. And actually 2 of my clients just recently hit 6 figures and help them negotiate that just within this month. So it's a very exciting time and a lot happening. But right now, what I want to focus in on is, talking to you more about this particular 3 things that can help you find your career path, and making it more about you versus me. So unless there's any questions on my credentials, my mission, we'll move into the content. And all of you, by the way, are muted right now. So if you want to ask a question, you can either do it in the chat or unmute yourselves and just ask directly. So I'm not seeing any chats or unmute, so I'm just going to keep moving forward. So in regards to the content that we're covering today, the 3 essential keys to find the job you love and take power over your career. The key question you really need to be asking yourself as you think about where you want to go with your career is, what do you think keeps people from finding the job they love? And it's not very complicated. First, you need to remember when you're looking for a job, and a lot of this is going to sound basic, but a lot of my clients do forget this part of it. When you're interviewing, trying to find a job, find a new one, even if you're trying to change the situation that you're in, there's 2 sides to every equation. There's you and there's the company. And both of you are going to have needs. You're going to have needs that you want. They're going to have needs that they want. You hope that they come together, and eventually you actually connect and you land the role. Now, there's a lot of things that go in between that, and I'll get a little more depth into that. But like the one thing I want to remind all of you, and I often will remind my clients this over and over again, is the one thing you can control is you. How you position yourself, how you're selling yourself. And I know sales is like a dirty word. Everyone hates sales, but honestly, we're all selling ourselves. All day long, you're selling yourselves, whether you're in work, you're in a relationship, you're constantly like, who are you projecting yourself to be? And then how are you improving yourself? So the one entity in that equation of like the company you want to go to and who you are, that you control is like you. So when you're looking for that first key thing to finding the job you want and taking a power over your career, you're looking for a new job, you need to have clarity. And that's the first of 3 C's. And I like a lot of alliteration, so I'm going to call this like, these are the 3 C's, the 3 things that you need to be thinking about to really get the career that you want. And that first C is clarity. And so when you're looking for a new job, I've seen this over and over with my clients, and I'm sure maybe you've experienced this or not, but like you've got a million different ideas. You want to do this, you want to do that, all your desires. You're absolutely sure that you want to be going in this direction, but you could go in this direction. And if you're not clear on where you want to go, And it is basic, but it's really important to really hit this over the head. If you're not clear, you're going to be sending out confusion. You're going to be sending out confusion to your potential employers, to recruiters you're working with. You got to be crystal clear, and always, 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 and this is like a key tip, even if you're not sure you want to do what you're interviewing for, you make it sound like there's been nothing else that you wanted to do than that job. You got to get really, really clear that you're interviewing and looking for that. But in regards to like really finding the clarity that you need, it's important because I said you're going to like send, you're going to like cause confusion for yourself. It could actually end up making the recruiter confused. Actually, oops, thank you. You could be causing confusion for yourself. The other thing is you could just be wasting your time on things. I've worked with many clients who come in and are like, look, I want to start my own business, or I want to find a new job. And they're not clear on where they want to go, that first C, that clarity. And then what happens is like you're wasting time on interviewing. It's not the right fit. So then you get disappointed. That can actually also hit your confidence. So it's just really important to find like and get really clear on what you want. So the first tool is really to get to know yourself. And you're like, well, that's kind of easy. Okay, get to know yourself, but how am I going to do that? And what I recommend and I work with my clients on is doing what is called a SWOT. And some of you might already be in corporate situations, have done this for companies, but doing a SWOT for yourself is really incredibly helpful. And I'm going to explain what that is. So SWOT, often, as I said, done for companies, is going to help you define who you are. And the first S, the SWOT of the S is SWOT. The first S starts for strengths. What are your strengths? And working with a coach or even working with a friend, but really looking at writing out like my strengths. So when I look at my strengths, like I'm an expert in digital marketing. I am a trained coach. I'm educated. You know, those are my strengths. I'm a team builder. I've got an outgoing personality. I don't mind being on video. Like there can be small to like big strengths that you're looking at, but every single thing that you have truly is an innate strength. And it's not even just important for the job search that you know your strengths. It's important you know your strengths because as you move forward in management, and I, obviously cannot tell where everyone is along in their roles, you're going to have to build teams. You need to know what your strengths are. You need to know what your weaknesses are so you can complement them. And it's really important when you're interviewing even the beginning because they're going to need to know, you need to voice what your strengths are. And it's always a question asked. Every time you interview, somebody's going to ask, like, what are your key 3 strengths? And you need to be able to bat them off, like just like that. So I often say, like, I'm a digital marketing expert. I like transparency. I'm a team builder. Those are 3 key strengths. I'll pick and maneuver my strengths based on what I'm interviewing for. So, it's very important to be like getting those job descriptions, understanding what the role is, talk to people internally, and we'll go a little bit more into this, but truly understanding what those strengths are and pivoting depending on what they're looking for. Just make sure that your real strengths. There is nothing worse than selling yourself into a job on a strength that you don't have. That's not really clear yours. That can be a big mismatch. But we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. We're going to focus on is like really like what are your strengths? And a very easy way to do it, I have a proprietary form that I work with my clients, but you can literally just put like strengths and start listing them. And like I said, ask people. The other area that you need to be looking at is the W, which, people say weaknesses. I don't like weaknesses. I know it's probably just the coach in me, but I think more of watch outs because I think anything can be a weakness, can be changed, but just things that you need to be looking at, the challenge areas that you could improve on. So maybe you're looking for a new job and they're actually looking for, they're looking for someone who has a graduate degree or a data science background. I'm obviously making these things up to be illustrative, but that might be a weakness that you have. For that particular job, you don't have those things that you need for your career. And you need to be really honest. Like, where are you lacking an area? You may not actually like to work with people. I've worked with clients who want to get into management and actually hate people. It's not going to be for you. Or you really need to work with someone then who's going to actually help you learn to at least tolerate managing people. Because as you move up in your career, when you start managing, it becomes a lot about psychology. So really understanding weaknesses, like you have trouble completing things on time. you're easily distracted. These wouldn't be things that you would say in an interview, but you need to know what they are so you can actually then put tools in place to help you make that happen. And it is important when you're interviewing, though, because it comes up. HR people love that question, like, what are your weaknesses? Always find something that you can pivot in that conversation to make it sound better. So yes, be honest with your weaknesses. No one ever needs to see them. That's for you to really truly assess who you are, what you can accomplish. But when it comes to like in interviews, and this is another little tip, help for your career boost, is that I always pick something that like sounds like a negative, but truly is like, can be flipped to a positive. So when it comes to my weakness that sometimes I say, I'm like, well, you know, I can sometimes really overwork and it can lead to me being very exhausted. And while that's true, what I'm saying to them in a really smart way is like, I'm going to put my all into this job. And sometimes you'll get the question back of like, well, then how are you dealing with it? I'm like, well, you know, I make sure that I take breaks, and you can add more flavor to that. But the point being is that if you're going to ever get asked for weaknesses in an interview, you make sure that you position it one that you can make it sound like it's actually a benefit. And I work with my clients to make sure that happens. But the real focus here is like, what are your weaknesses? So you put your strengths together. My strengths is I'm a people person. My weakness is that I have trouble completing tasks on time, probably because I'm a people person. I'm always talking to everyone and not focused on getting the job done. It's just good things to know that. The other area to focus in on are opportunities. So that's the O in the SWOT. And the opportunities are where you start thinking about like, what do you want to look at? So I was working with a client yesterday, and they're moving out of real estate altogether. So, but what their passion is like event planning, philanthropy. What they also really enjoyed was fitness. So you start thinking about the opportunities, like where your excuse me, where your passions lie, and then opportunities to go find them. So for this person that I was working with yesterday, fitness being one thing, like, do you want to buy a gym? Do you want to invest in, go back to school and get more training on that in regards to like fitness, teaching other people about fitness? Like, where do you want to go with that? So really, when you're looking for those opportunities, what do you like? Where can you find opportunities to actually then go ahead and try to find those different roles? And the last things are threats. And the threats sometimes can lead into weaknesses, but really on that, like that usually ends up being like, threats are really thinking about this, like there's a lot of competition for this role. I don't have the training that I need. My skills are outdated, which ties to the training, but like those things that like going to keep you from finding what you want to eventually accomplish and get where you want to go. So that first part of developing a SWOT is really, really important. And again, just for, you can be doing this with yourselves, but it's like what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what your opportunities are, and what are your threats. And you need to be honest and ask for outside input. So I worked out with, there's another session that I've done just previously, which was called the board of directors. And your board is the people that you trust when you're looking to eventually find a role, to really help you understand what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. Because I can tell you, people in general, and all my clients have done this, way overestimate what they're bad at. And they also way underestimate what they're bad at. Like we have our own like focus. We need to see the bigger picture. And we also way underestimate what we're good at, and we way underestimate what we're good at. And sometimes, like, so if you're in that place where you're constantly like, you know, beating yourself up, it's good to hear from other people and hear what those strengths are. It's always good to get an outside perspective. So those are the areas where you're looking at when you're first looking to get power of your career. You want to get that clarity. And the way you're going to get clear is by doing a SWOT on yourself. Now, before I move on and introduce the next concept, are there any questions? All right. So now I'm going to show an actual document that can help you with assessing and getting further clarity on any kind of role that you're looking at. So I'm going to screen share this. And there it is. And I just want to make sure, Michelle, can you see that? Yep, great. So what I'm showing here, and you can see at the top, is a job company position assessment worksheet. So as you've decided, you turned out, oh, I think someone's trying to join. As you have now defined in the clarity, the one area that's key on in the clarity of like who you are, now you need to start assessing like what jobs and roles are out there. You get yourself out there, you got some clarity, you've seen where the opportunities and threats are, and now you need an opportunity to actually assess them. So I work with my clients and put together this document, and you'll see along the very top, and you can build this in a Google Sheet. I like Google Sheets a lot because you can add people. They're very easy to like add in general, but like you can share them and add to them. But you start with like the company, and remember always, it's like dating. They love to hear about themselves. So make sure you're preparing and really learning about that company. And then across the top are the companies. So I threw some in there. Who doesn't want to work at Apple, Airbnb, Google, or Facebook? And actually one of my clients is now working at Airbnb, which is very exciting. Then, you know, you put in the, just below that, like what the job description. So the good thing about you're like pulling everything into one place so that you can easily access it and put all the information and then compare. So the title that you're looking at, I threw in some different titles in, kind of looking at like my area of expertise, but you know, you could be, this is more advertising, but you could be account supervisor. Some of these you could be human resources supervisor. It's really depending on what you are looking for to make sure, oh, Hannah, yes. So, sorry, just gonna stop for a second. So yes, that is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's called a SWOT, S-W-O-T. Sorry, I didn't realize the chat was off. I asked you guys to ask questions and then I wasn't even looking at the chat. So we're gonna come back to this document here, and I'll move that down to looking at some key questions and criteria. I'm very much about the key questions when I'm working with my clients. A lot of people jump to answers. It's really important to like get the key questions, that like really probing in on this. So the key questions or criteria that we're trying to overall look at are around fit, challenge, money, and security. And that fit, challenge, and money, security, there's also another module. It's on my YouTube page if you want to learn more about that. But those are the three things that you need to be thinking about when you're looking at changing a job. When you're really looking, if you want to boil it down, to really assess. Fit, is it a good fit for me on many different levels? And there's actually a sheet that I have run that gives you a bunch of all of these questions. What the challenges, is the right challenge for you? Do you have the right ability? And then is it the right money and security? And those things can change as you go through your career. In the beginning, especially when the money may not be there, you're looking maybe for that fit, the challenge might be the most motivating. Or maybe it's really more the fit, like a place that you can be more nurtured and grow. And then over time, you might end up getting married or have kids, and then money becomes much more of a driver. It's just really understanding what's the most important. But those three things then break into the questions all along the left that I work with my clients on. A couple of those key things, since we're on that square, I'll just say, like, in interviewing prep, some things to think about: don't fill the silence. Answer the question. It's okay to have pause. If you don't have an answer right away, you could just ask. I actually had this happen in an interview. They asked me a question. I stopped for a second. I'm like, let me think about that. And I got feedback that they thought that I was just so thoughtful and smart, when I thought I was just trying to kill time. So, you know, think about how your perceptions are and make sure that you're not just filling the silence just to talk, because sometimes when people get nervous, they just start talking. Also, make sure you're giving a thorough and informed opinion, and also support what you're saying. This is really important when you're interviewing, and I'm getting a little tactical, but I think these are important things to just share. People, I hear it all the time when I'm prepping my clients for interviews. They're like, I'm not, you know, I've been interviewing before, I'm not really standing out. And it turns out they're just saying a lot of things that are true, but they're not giving like concrete evidence of their experience that they can they can accomplish the role that they're interviewing for. So things of that nature of like, if you ever hear yourself say like, I really like the culture. Great. Why do you like the culture? I've got great experience. I've done this before. What have you done? And what are the results? Results are so important. Everyone wants to see and know that if they're going to hire you, you're going to come in and actually change it. Along the left-hand side as we go down, here's some just key questions you guys could be thinking about to actually assess these companies. But like, what's the one thing you want to make sure they take away, especially in relation to this job? One of my clients that I worked with this weekend, he wants to be known as a disruptor. So we streamlined his resume and his positioning and his story to get across that he was the disruptor they were looking for. What's the one thing you want to make sure they, what's the most important thing to you? Challenge, fit, security, money, put them in order. I'm only going to hit a couple of these, but just we talked about that. Like, is this the right security, money? Is it the right fit and right to challenge? And I'll tell you, the one thing everyone forgets is fit. The challenge sounds exciting, the money sounds good, and the fit is just awful. And fit will be the one thing that drives most people out. Things to start thinking about, is a lateral move? Are you going to have direct reports? Just little things to be thinking about that could, be a deal breaker for you or not, but these help you understand like what your deal breakers are. How did you hear about the job and the company? That can always be a really good start with any kind of conversation. What attracts you about the company and the job? This is really important. A lot of my clients, and then when I mentioned that up, like making sure that you over prepare, you need to prep. You need to know their mission, their vision. If you can't find it, you need to ask someone who works there. Like, you need to remember that they want to hear about themselves, and all they want to hear is this is the role you've always wanted. Another question, ask yourself, like, who do you know that works there? You've all got social networks. You've got LinkedIn, all the different platforms. LinkedIn's very important if you're not on, regardless of all the job sites that are coming up, LinkedIn is still the key one. So you need to know who works there. And they can also give you perspective you didn't know. Because you got to remember one thing, you're selling yourself and they're selling yourself. And they're hoping you're going to work out and end the pain of having to recruit, the payment, all of that. So it's important to try to find other people who work there. One, they could actually put a good word in for you, maybe even get your resume fast-tracked. Two, they can actually tell you what's truly going on there. It's very important to find out that information because, again, as I said, like, you're selling, they're selling, and nothing's worse than getting into a situation and finding out that you've been sold and it's not actually what you thought it was going to be. I've already covered the mission and stated purpose, but you need to know these. And, what's appealing about the challenge they're presenting? What is and what isn't? And a key thing around security, so this is tying more into those roles, is like, does this company feel secure? Is it a new company? Always ask, and this is another really key tip, always ask. Someone's trying to join. Always, oh, hi. Always ask why the role is open. It is one of the best questions you can ever ask when interviewing, because if they say like it's a net new position, that's great. There's an opportunity to that means the company's growing. If they're like, you find out that there's been 4 people in that role before you, and you can either ask in the interview and also people outside, you're going to be like, well, maybe that's a warning sign that this is not the best area for you to go. Another key area to focus in is what are the 1 or 2 questions they hope that they don't ask you for in general. We often find like focusing on the rote questions and really preparing ourselves, but like we always bring whatever our own background is and a little bit fear into these meetings. So making sure that you really write down, what are you hoping they don't ask you for? Like, is it the training that you don't have? If you don't have the BA, like, you need to prepare for those questions just as much as how you're selling yourself, to either deflect from that like that and show other ways that you can actually move the job forward and or complement and or give and or show that that requirement that they're asking for isn't necessary and you can circumvent it. And then really getting to like what you don't like. So what you do and what you don't like. Lastly, just making sure that as you always remember they want you to be the one, and then writing down as you go through feedback, because you're going to, a lot of these jobs, you're going to go through many rounds of reviews, and you want to just make sure that you're assessing along the way what you've been hearing. So like one of my clients I just run here, like, needs more energy, which is funny. He's a very energetic guy, but he stopped being really energetic because he thought they were a little bit more low-key. So being authentic is really important. So, you know, in this clarity, this is one of these documents that I work with my clients to really give them clarity, assess, ask these questions. There's tons of questions. The point isn't about answering all of them. It's just really making sure that you're really getting clear on like who you are. So that was the SWOT we discussed. And then what is it that this company is really saying to you, and how does it fit with you? And these are the things that you can do to kind of help assess. So before I move on to the next C, the first C was clarity. I just want to see if there are any questions. And I'm not seeing, oh, wait, let me look down here. Okay. So if there isn't any questions, I'll move into the next C. All right. And I'm actually going to take it off of the share and go back here. So the next C is like commitment. So you've got clarity, now you got to be committed. You now know who you are, you know who the company is, and you might be learning that as you go, but now you need to commit. And how you're going to commit is really starting to like create an action plan. And the first place the action plan starts with is creating SMART goals. You need to know what you want to accomplish. So I'm not sure if a lot of you are familiar with SMART goals, but these SMART goals stand for a couple of things. One is, you know, when the first one is making sure your goals are specific. So is the goal that you have specific? So I'm going to give you a broad goal, and like clients come in all the time saying this, like, I want a new job. Well, I want a new job is too vague. Like, it's not specific. And that's the first part of that SMART. S stands for specific. The M stands for measurable. You know, is there something like, how are you going to measure if this is the right goal for you? So a SMART goal could be like, I want a new job and I want it to be 100K. Well, okay, great. Like, that's starting to build a smarter goal, because measurable, you can decide like if this job is actually going to give you the dollars that you need. Achievable. Is it achievable? So I'm kind of like building to this, like SMART goals, like I want a new job and I want it to give me 100K. Well, you need to be, and the A is achievable. Is it really achievable? Are you at a level that you can actually make 100K? I'm not telling you not to go for it, but making sure that you're putting together, you know, is this achievable from like a monetary standpoint, from a training standpoint, from the actual skills that I have. The fourth part of it is relevant. So SMART: specific, measurable, achievable, and relevant. Is it relevant? Is it relevant to you? Is it anything anyone needs? Especially for my entrepreneurs, when you listen to this, is this relevant? You know, are you creating something that nobody needs? Is the job relevant? A lot of industries are changing really, really rapidly. So just to pick on my own industry, I'm in advertising. Advertising marketing is changing dramatically. Digital has changed everything that we were able to accomplish before, and that like you needed more layers. Now everything's digital, and that's changed. Digital's changed everything really, but for advertising now everything can be done faster, smarter, cheaper. So website builds, we used to be able to like spend hundreds of thousands of dollars making. Now you can actually go on Wix.com, a really good resource for those of you that are trying to create your own .coms. Wix.com, you go on there, you pick the theme. You can pick it on theme on pretty much anyone, but Wix.com, it doesn't even charge you until you're ready to actually pay for it. And it's just very simple, and it's hurting the rest of the industry. So, you know, is it relevant? And the last, the T in the SMART is time-based. So specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. So I'm going to go back to that original goal of like, I want a new job, a new career. So again, is it specific? No. So I'm going to make it SMART. And the way I'm going to put it is like, I'm going to give you an example of like one that I actually did to make sure I moved from that assistant account executive to the next level. And I'm like, I wanted a new job as an account manager. So account manager is the next level up from an assistant account executive in advertising by June, in one of the top 10 New York independent agencies, working on a healthcare account. So it's getting very specific. It's time-based. You know, it can be measured, and it gets in even like independent agencies and not wanting to work at like a large corporation. And I'll apply to 3 jobs and connect with 5 friends who are in the industry to ask for informational interviews a week. So I gave myself very specific targets, and that's what I did. I looked at it and I was like, I want a new job. I want to progress. I knew what the role was. I knew when I wanted to have it by, and I knew I wanted to be in New York. And how I was going to go about it was contacting my network and activating my network. And it really isn't as important as like if you make the date, it's just getting all those details into a row to move you in the right direction. So that gives you an example of a SMART goal going from like, I want a new job, which is where I want to start, but then like, what is it? And I worked with a coach to really hone that in, and I've been able to do that. So it's a really great place to start when you're looking at your goals. Like think about as you write down, you like you said your New Year's commitment was like, I want to get a new job. Okay, what kind of job? Where? When? Is it relevant? Putting a time-based against it. So I'm sorry, my son just came in and said like he loved me. So I'll make sure next time I do it when he's not home. That was awesome though. It's nice to be loved. Anyway, so so SMART goal would have been to make sure that you really get it clear. And, as I said in the very beginning of this, if you want to use your free discovery session with me, I can make sure to also help you just hone that in like a half hour of like what your SMART goal could be if you're looking for a new career. So definitely make sure you take advantage of that. But I'm going to go back to like specifically on these SMART goals. So now you've got your goals. You're like, I'm going to advertising. I'm going to do it in 6 months. I'm going to do all these things. Now you got to honestly assess yourself. Like, are you up for the role? Is it a stretch? How supportive? And have others support you. So that goes back again to your board of directors. Make sure, especially if you're stretching, that you have people that are actually supporting you. It's called confirmation bias. We tend to find people that can confirm what we really feel. You got to keep positive. You got to keep that commitment. You've given a goal. That's the second C. You've got the clarity on it. Now you've got the commitment of the goal. You've got it all assessed. And now you need to do is like break it down into manageable tasks. So that goal of like, I want a job as account manager in advertising by June in the top 10 New York independent agencies, and I'll contact 3 people and connect with 5 friends. Like now you got to actually break that down because like it sounds great and I can do it, but now how am I going to achieve it? So the reason to break it down into small tasks is to avoid the overwhelm and actually not follow through on your commitment. I just saw your comment, Hannah. Thank you. But break it down into tasks to manageable pieces and bite-sized sizes to avoid the overwhelm, and you're going to set deadlines to commit. So let's just say for this purpose of this, like I realize that actually to become this account manager, I actually need more training on management. I haven't had many people below me. There are many different resources, one of them being lynda.com, great, especially if your company has it. Otherwise, there's plenty of stuff on YouTube. There's so much free content. But like, okay, how do I start thinking and get effectively getting those management experiences so that when I go to my next role, I can say like, no, I haven't had 2 people or direct reports below me, but I do understand what management is and be able to explain it and sell it on them. So, you really need to be assessing like of this, like what are the different tasks for this? How do I break it down? And then who can help me? A lot of people when they're looking for a role try to do it all themselves. And I just ask that you try not to do it by yourself, but you really incorporate, because networking is so important. There's so many jobs out there. They get so many resumes. Having a connection is going to get you through easier. And then after you go into those different areas of like, here's the goal that you're trying to accomplish. Here are all the tasks of it. You assign yourself a deadline for each one. So I said that I was going to do 3 jobs and 5 friends per week. At the end of each week, I'd sit with myself and go, who did I contact? And again, it wasn't important if I actually I tried to do the 5, but did I do anything? Am I moving this forward? So breaking that down, and then really prioritizing. So I've worked with men and women who, again, they can be all over the place. Like, I want to start my own company. I want to find a new job. All those things that can take you on your career path. What I do with my clients is like, let's just focus in on what the most important thing is. Like, it's this job in advertising. Then as you break down those, yeah, you might want your own, let's say, advertising agency down the road, but let's park that. Think of this job now as a paid internship to learn where you want to go. And that's been a whole new area of also working with my clients. Like, you know, I know some of your probably jobs, you're on this call, you're like, I just can't stand being there anymore. But if you could think of it as a place of, you know, I'm learning what I don't want and I'm getting paid for it. It can be a really powerful turn in how you observe things, and you can become more positive to it. And, you know, how great is it to actually get paid to learn what you don't want or what you do want and move that forward. Just kind of sharing that little tidbit as well. So we've gone through clarity, and the clarity of how to like determine like who you are through that SWOT analysis. Then also how you determine who the company is and if it's a good fit for you through that job company positioning assessment I shared. Then going into commitment, and the commitment is really setting up true goals that you're going to commit to make happen, and then making sure you break those down into tasks and enlist others to help you. And the last area is conviction. And a conviction is a real belief that you can do it, and that anything is possible. And a lot of people get tripped up in the conviction part of it, because as you start to get close to things, it can get a little nerve-wracking. Like, can I do this? You know, is it above me? Having conviction, especially when you're interviewing, is really important. So what I work in this area, and we talked a lot about a little bit before, was the selling, and positioning. So it's really, conviction will come when you own your story and you start sticking to it. It's a theme. You can always change it, but like staying in one place. So this is actually my favorite part of working with clients, and I love it. I have everyone, when I first start working with them, read me their resume. And then I question them along the way, and then I read it back. And I get like 2 or 3 things. We talked about that. Was that the one thing we mentioned on the job positioning statement? Like, what do we want them to take away? So I'll look at it, I'll read it back to them, and they're always blown away. And I ask them, like, is anything that I've said not true? And they usually say no. Actually, like, they always say no. But that's because, like, we often lose sight of how awesome we are. That conviction of, like, no matter where you are in your career, you got a job. You probably started without one, you got a job. And then you may be moved to the next one. It may not be exactly where you want to be, but you're really moving forward. That conviction of belief of, like, really looking at, like, everything was meant to be. Now, if I read you my resume on here, and I won't do it because I'm recording this, it looks stellar. Like, I went from an administrative assistant to a chief marketing officer, and I did it in, like, yeah, in in less than like 15 years. That's amazing, especially for a woman. But thank you again. Those hurdles along the way were rough. Like, I've been laid off. I have actually been asked to be laid off because I just could not stand where I was at. And that was probably more information, but whatever. But I started making choiceful decisions, and I just really knew in my heart, and I really started to learn, like, what do I truly want, and got that conviction. So we're going to go back to, like, really focusing in on, like, my favorite part of working with ladies, always selling yourself. And it's something you just have to embrace. I know everyone hates sales, is supposed to like this dirty word. It really isn't. Like as I said in the very beginning, you're always selling yourself. So when you're really looking at this part of it, you have to have a clear story of who you are, and then be convinced about it. So as I mentioned, like, I'm very transparent. Like, you're seeing who I am. This is how I coach. Like, you're either going to like it or you're not. But I'm very transparent. I'm going to tell you, like, I'm very direct. I'll tell you exactly how I feel. And I have an international background, and I will make sure that, depending on who I'm interviewing with, I'm giving them 3 at least key salient points that I can show through my resume that looks like I made every move on purpose. They don't need to know all the background. And I can tell you, people get really tripped up. I'm like, I didn't have this job, or I've been out of work for a while. Everything can be positioned to actually benefit you. And the workforce has changed so much that those kind of blips don't even really mean anything anymore. So really having a really clear story on who you are. whether working with me or another coach or your friends, like, who are you? What do you bring to the table? What have you accomplished? And I just recommend, actually, if you know, and I said I offered to everyone on this phone call and let's listen to the recording, sign up for a free discovery call. We'll walk through and we'll get you your story. And it'll be extremely empowering to take you to where you need to go. But conviction's not just a mindset, not just that. It's also like being able to make sure that, you know, you're, when you're looking at like making sure that you are finding that conviction, you're preparing. There's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. You just don't make up a story. Like, you hone it over time and you finesse it and you move with it. You got to make it realistic. Like, again, like, you can, a lot of people can talk themselves into anything. I've talked myself into a lot of things, but you want to make sure that you set yourself up for success. And it's really realistic, because the worst thing that can be is you get in a role, you don't like it, they don't like, it's not a good fit, and you end up out of a role. That's not good. Like, you really want to try to find that right place. So you got to be realistic with it. And some key things that, like, you just keep trying over and over again. There's a really interesting story in Thomas Edison. He tried to make that light bulb 1,000 times. And we beat ourselves up when we don't do something right once. So making sure that you're interviewing a lot. Like, you know, I say, like, you should be serial dating on your current job, even if you're happy where you're at. For those of you listening, like, keep interviewing, keep those skills fresh. It's called defensive dating. Making sure that you always remember that no matter how overwhelming it can be, like if you've got negative feedback or the job seems above you, and making sure that it's maybe just, it stretches different than it being really above you, but making sure that you remember, and I'm really putting this in my book that I'm writing right now, like, it's just a job. In the end, it's just a job. And all of you have been in different places in your career, and you'll find another area that you want to go in. And remember, it's just an experiment. If you can come into life just being like, fuck it, and that's good. I swore also, great. I swear a lot, so hopefully I didn't offend anybody, but it's just an experiment. Like, I work with my clients just remembering that, like, in the end, as you walk out your door every day, you can either hide and not try, or just experiment. If it doesn't work, you can move on. And that kind of attitude, that conviction, not a laissez-faire or like I don't care, but just more like, look, I'm out here to try it. And that goes back to, like, when I was saying, make sure you're really thinking about it as, like, you know, it's just an experiment. I'm just going to try. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to move to the next thing. Because I mentioned, like, careers have ups and downs, and you always want to make sure that you are, you are always progressing up. And I promise you, even if you feel like you're down and you're like, I got to find a job right away, you're always on the way up. So I always bring some added value. Those are the 3 C's. So it was clarity, it was commitment, and it was conviction. And the last C is just to celebrate. Now that's 4 C's. And like I said, I always add added value, but I really celebrate along the way. And it helps with clients too that I've been working with. Like, when you get that interview that you didn't think you were going to get, celebrate it. One of my clients got that interview at Airbnb, was so excited. And they didn't end up getting it, but it opened up a door to something else. You never know where it's going to lead, but that you're taking those risks, that you're moving those things forward. You got to celebrate them along the way. Celebrate along the way of, like, when you find those 3 companies, whatever companies you say you're going to focus in on, like, you're going to do, I'm going to meet on a weekly basis. I'm going to reach out to 5 contacts. I'm going to, like, go to 3 different companies and see who comes back to you, and celebrate each time that happens, and ask for feedback if you don't hear from them. Like, be bold, take that conviction and ask, especially if they say I passed. Well, hey, you know what? I'm just interviewing right now. Could you give me some information that could help me in my career? Keep asking, even if like 10 out of the 11 don't, 1 might. And that can give you some key information that you don't realize, that is maybe impeding where you want to go in your work. So make sure that you keep looking at that. So to wrap up this area of the call, remember to be clear and create clarity, knowing who you are and being supported by those you trust. The commitment to move things forward. They gave you some tools on how to do that. And conviction that you can do it. Unshakable that you can do it. And reserve the right always to alter your course. Just because you decide to go in one direction You don't have to be myopic about it. Sometimes you learn information and go in the direction, but you do want to at least start on the one path and take steps towards it. And as you learn things and update, then you can move. Just remember one last thing, like no matter what, like own that you're a badass. And it really is true, because like you're on this call, you want to move things forward, you have roles or you're looking for a role, and the economy has changed things a lot. Corporate America's changed things a lot. And along the way, like you have value to add, and it's really getting that story, the clarity on your story, the commitment to your story, and the conviction to sell your story that will get you into the role that you want. So are there any questions on what I've just said? Got a question? So we're talking about past experience on interview. How can you talk about a situation that didn't work out? That's a really very good question. So I kind of mumbled through that, but just to say, when talking about past experience on interview, how can you talk about situations that didn't work out? It's thank you for that question. It's always a little bit tricky, obviously. And it depends on who you're interviewing with. But the first rule of number one, never trash where you've been. Because the company will see it as like, well, they come into our world and trash us. But in situations that didn't work out, I have actually just said that, you know, and it's kind of a combination of both, but depends on specifically the situation. So I wish I could ask you a little more detail, but I'll give the example of myself. So at a previous role, and I'll try to keep it pretty vague in case like my old company's listening to this, you know, it didn't work out. There were lawsuits happening. It was crazy. And I'd only been there a year and a half. And I just decided to leave. And in that, when I started interviewing, I would tell them, I'm like, because it was in the public news that like, I don't know if you know much about my company, but it's been in the public news, and I'm not disparaging anyone, there were a lot of lawsuits happening, and that made our clients uneasy. And I take a lot of pride in my job and wanted to be at some place that was growing and thriving, that I continue to grow. And it was just an obstacle that I couldn't overcome. So that was one way to pivot off of that. And, you know, it can also be, you know, I'm not trying to say lie. I'm just trying to say like we're selling, we're positioning. So for example, you know, one of my clients decided to have a baby. And there could be conversations around like, I decided to take time off to be with my family. You know, I decided there's different ways to position things. And always is that, thank you very much. You know, it really is about that reframing, framing the conversation in a way that it you know, that is tolerable and understandable for the person that you're interviewing with. And I've gone variety of like extremes. Like I actually worked at a place where there literally were lawsuits coming through, and just shared that like, if there's a hurdle at the company that wasn't making you able to do your job, as long as you're not disparaging that company and laying it out like it wasn't your issue, it was just something that was happening in the company and you really felt it was time to move on, most people understand that. And the good news, again, like most people aren't staying at places longer than a year and a half to 2 years anyway, so it's not surprising if you're moving on. And yes, that was the awesome framing, and I do that a lot with my clients. Like, how do you position all that stuff? Like, it's unique to a lot of you and like what you've been experiencing, and I'd love to work with you on that. Are there any other questions? Sometimes when interviewing, you can have a good or bad chemistry with the person you're speaking to. How can you tell if it's good opportunity and you should look beyond that? How can you tell if it's sometimes when interviewing, you have a good or bad chemistry with the person you're speaking to? How can you tell if it's, oh, you mean like if the chemistry is bad, if you should overlook that? Can you just give me clarity on that? Yes, okay, really good. So then, it's another great, Elise Epstein, all these great questions. How can you do, so chemistry is really important. Again, like I mentioned, like interviewing and finding a job is like dating, and it's a big commitment because like you're probably spending more time at work than you are with your own family, which sometimes can be a little tragic depending on how much you like your job. But when you're interviewing with a person, it's really important to notice that chemistry is off. And I mentioned the 3 areas: fit, challenge, and security. Fit is the one people often overlook. Like the money sounds good, the challenge sounds good, and you gotta be kind of a little wary when like everything sounds amazing. Is this a good company to work with? Is it a good fit? Now it could depend on who you're interviewing with. If it's bad chemistry, let's say with like maybe the recruiter. I'm not saying it's usually bad chemistry with the recruiter, but you're not going to be working with that person. So one, it's really important to assess who you're talking to, and who you're interviewing with, and will that be your direct report? And because that can help you with chemistry. You should look beyond it, and that's kind of like one of those warning signs, like a watch out, like when you could do your own SWOT on the company. Okay, that person at the chemistry office, like that represented the whole entire culture. So some of the questions you can be asking too is like, so who succeeds here? I have a person that's just taken a role at Google. It's very competitive. They're not a very competitive person. They're not quite enjoying it. Like, you know, they're working on that, but like really understand like who succeeds here, who doesn't succeed here. Those are two really good questions to assess. And looking at that chemistry, you know, you'll get a lot of feeling from that. But again, one, really focus on like, are they the person you'd have to work with? Because if they don't, see how, if the rest of them, the majority of them are a better fit and better chemistry. Because quite honestly, everywhere we're going to work, we're going to find someone that we don't really quite enjoy. I've been in the industry long enough, or the companies long enough to know that's always the case. But could be a watch out sign, and there'd be ways to definitely probe it. One also could be making sure, as I said before, making sure you tap your network. Do you know anyone that works there? Can they validate any of your concerns? That's really very important. And yes, you should look beyond that to make sure you validate, but it doesn't necessarily mean that if it's bad chemistry, you should not think about that role. Just you need to do more assessment on it. Any other questions that you want to get some thoughts on? All right, well then I'll start wrapping this up. And if you, while I'm wrapping up, if anyone has any questions, feel free to pepper them in. But I hope that you got a lot out of this quick call on like how important is the 3 C's to moving and getting power of your career, around the clarity you need and some tools on how to get clear on who you are, the commitment that you need, and then also like the conviction that you need. These are things definitely that I work on with my clients. I want to just say that you know, again, that you can reach out to me, for anyone that's listening to the call or on it, for a free discovery call, or basically a half-hour initial coaching session. And you can reach out to info@loamlife.com. We'll set you up on the calendar. I get really booked, so you know, definitely do reach out and try to get on as soon as possible. And we'll talk some more about these, make it more applicable to you. I know it's kind of broad, and also just to let you know that I will be actually also starting some online webinars towards the middle of this year that will cover more of this stuff, because I know that sometimes one-on-one coaching can be cost prohibitive. But if you're ready to have a conversation, get the free coaching. And I just want to thank all of you for participating and joining my call. And I hope you have a great night and a happy new year, and you find the career that you want. And I'd love to work with you to make that happen. Thanks so much.